right, so now we have our basic web page together. The next big part is to work on some of the styling to make this look and function more correctly on all the breakpoints, and to also get this style so that it's looking more complete. So we're going to go ahead and put in a lot of the styling for our website. So I'm going to jump into my styles.css and I'll start doing some styling for the mission page. I also like to keep my my CSS organized, so I'm going to go ahead and comment out that for a header section, where I have my header section, so /star header section and then // just to make a comment, keep all my header stuff together, comment out carousel. And then commenting out my footer section as well. There we go. So I'm going to create a new, I like to kind of go in page order, so I'm going to create a new line here and create a new section for my mission section. So mission section. And in here, I'm going to go ahead and target, so target the mission div. And I'm going to set the background color to being £E4 D29D. There we go, semicolon. I'm going to set the background image to being a linear gradient. I'm going to have that linear gradient going from the color EEF08A, comma, to £819A2D, semicolon. Goes there. And you can see that that's going to give me this kind of light green to a dark green gradient in the background. I'm going to set a nice border top to kind of put a little bit of space in between that block and the carousel block. So I'm going to set a border top, and that's going to be 20 pixels solid RGBA, and the color is going to be 238, 200, 86, and at a 50% opacity. And that gives me a nice bar right there. So the next thing we're going to work on is our services page. So after that, I'm going to create another comment here for the services section. And in there, I'm going to target services or service. And I'm going to set the margin to being 20 pixels by 0 pixels. I'm going to set the text align to center. Then I'm going to target the services image icons. So targeting the icons in this section and setting the display to being block. Setting the width to being 80 pixels. The margin to being 0 and auto. and the margin bottom to being 5 pixels, just to give them more space. Then I'm going to target that services H3. I'm going to set the margin bottom to 10 pixels. And then I'm going to write a media query that's going to apply to my paragraph. So I'm going to say at media, only screen, and set the minimum width to 450, min width to 450 pixels, and max width to 768. And I'm going to target the service paragraph rule in here. And that's going to have the padding be 0 and then 20%. So just something on the smaller size, the padding is going to adjust. And we'll go ahead and save that. And that's starting to look pretty good. We need to go ahead and adjust some of these things so that this color is going full page width. These icons are, so the icons adjust as well, and work more on a breakpoint. So let's jump back into our index.html and let's go ahead and adjust that. So I'm going to locate my mission section, and I'm going to change this to becoming two columns of text as opposed to just one. Makes it a little bit easier to read. So I'm going to go ahead and within my mission section, I'm going to locate my container. I've located the mission. In that content container, I need to go ahead and create a row. So I'm going to create a div, and I'm going to give it a class of row. And that actually needs to go, cut that. That needs to go after the H2 so I can adjust the paragraph itself. And I'm going to set, cut this, wrap it all the way around my paragraph there. And comment that out. And our mission row. Then I'm going to set some column classes here for these two paragraphs. So the first one is, I'm going to locate that paragraph tag and set the class to COL MD5, and then offset MD1. And then on the second paragraph tag, I'm going to set the class to COL MD5. I'm going to save that. And I can see that that gives me 2 paragraphs of text, or 2 columns of text. That looks really good. I want to make this go full width. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this container that, or I'm going to comment out this container here. Save that, and you can see this is now going full width to the rest of the page, and that looks really nice. So then I'm going to scroll down to my services section, and I'm going to go ahead and adjust some of these column widths as well. So within the services, right now we have COL SM4. Let's just go ahead and add more so that way it's responding more. So I'm going to have COL XS12, COL SM6, and then COL MD4. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that whole thing here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to apply that to all of my icons. And then save that. And so that I can see that this is going to respond a little bit more, going from 3 to 2 to 1. So that looks pretty good as far as the responsiveness now on that. Wait a second, my redraw is being really slow. So going from a 3 to a 2 to a 1. I would also like to add in, when it gets to a really large size, maybe make this go to 1 column so they all line up. So let's add that in here and do COL LG2. Copy that part and add that in. And save it. And now I can see that at that large size, those are all now lining up. I need to do one last thing in the services section to finalize the styling. So in our CSS, you remember that we set these to being an 80 pixel size, but we need to set a class on all of these images so that way that size and those rules are applying. So for every image in my services section for these icons, I need to set a class of icon. I'm going to go ahead and copy that little class here, and I will paste it into every single image here. And save it. And there you can see that those rules that we applied in our CSS document are now applying. So then our next step is to start adjusting the Our Staff section. So I'm scroll down to Our Staff. I'm going to jump back into my CSS rules, and I will create a new section. Staff section here. And for that, I'm going to tag the staff, and I'm going to set a background color to being pound E4D29D, and then setting a background image of being a linear gradient of pound E4D29D to pound CDAE50. So I get kind of a nice tan color going into a darker golden color. And I would like to turn these into cards. So let's go ahead and write the CSS rules for the cards, and then we'll go back and adjust the HTML for these. So let's target the staff. card. I'm going to set the background color to RGBA 255, 255, 255, and 50% opacity. And then let's target those images in here. So let's target staff, that card, IMG, and set the padding top to 15 pixels. So none of that's really going to do anything right now. We need to jump back into our HTML, and then we're going to go ahead and add in those card classes to all of our doctors. So in my HTML, I'm going to locate each of the doctor sections. So I have the class of doctor. I'm going to go ahead and write in, add the card class in there. So it'll read class card doctor SM4. I go ahead and copy that card and apply it to all of the doctors. And then I'll save that. And then you will see our CSS rules now being applied because it is targeting that the card class there. The last thing I want to do with this is adjusting some of the column dimensions. So I'm going to change this from reading COL SM4 to reading COL SM6, and then COL MD 4, and then setting a margin bottom MB to 5. So let me go ahead and copy those column classes and apply them to each of the doctors. Let's save that. And then I can see there's my bottom margin. I can see that at the medium size, this is going to start responding. There we go. So then it gets to 2, 2, and 2, which looks very nice. So now we're going to adjust the testimonials section. Let's scroll down to our testimonials on our page here, and we'll jump over to our CSS. And we are going to adjust or write some of the following rules. So after my staff section, I'm going to create another section. Call it testimonials. And in there, I'm going to write the following rules. So targeting testimonials. I'm going to set the padding to 0. I'm going to target the H2. I'm going to set the display to none. The H2. There it goes. So just that header section will not display. Now I need to target the testimonials block quote and set the margin to 0, border left, is none. Minimum height is 500 pixels. And the position is relative. Then I'm going to target the quote, our ID of quote within that block quote. Testimonials, block quote. And then targeting the quote itself, set the background color to being RGBA 255, 255, 255, and 0.6. And the padding is going to be 20 pixels and then 5%. The position is absolute. Bottom is 0. The width is 75%. The font weight is going to be 400. And the border radius is going to be 0, 50 pixels, 0 and 0. And then we're going to set a hover effect to this. So targeting testimonials, block quote, quote, and the hover, and set the background color to being RGBA 239, 240, 196, and 90%. Now we need to add some background images for this, because right now this just kind of adjusted. You see I've got a nice hover effect here, and then I've got a cool little color with a nice little rounded edge. It's also only taking up 75% of this little block here. So let's add some background images so you can see that a little bit better. So we're going to first target the testimonial section for Jane H. And I'm going to set the background URL // grab my images folder. I'm going to locate my testimonials images and find Jane H. There she is. And I should pop that image in. Then I need to set that to no repeat. By default they tile. And then center and center. So that'll center on the X and Y. And then I'm going to set the background size to cover. Save that. And you can see there's my image in here with the little girl. So I'm going to repeat this for the other three, this kind of same thing for the other three. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to copy that. Duplicate that rule, and then instead of Jane H, it needs to be the McPhersons. And then I need to adjust that image so it's testimonial, and find McPhersons. Save that. And I spelled McPhersons wrong. And that'll bring in that image. There we go. And Paste in again, and I'm going to target John B. Swap out the image here for John B. Save that. You can see that image popping in. That looks good. And then last but not least is Lorraine. So change my rule to be Lorraine S. And then that image is going to be for Lorraine. Save that. And that brought in Lorraine. So that's all looking pretty good so far. I want to go ahead and remove this border. So I'm going to jump back into my HTML here, and I'm going to find my my testimonials here, and I'm going to change that back into a container fluid. So this content container needs to go to container fluid, and I'll save that. And now you can see this is going full width, which looks much nicer. These images load. And that looks great. So let's jump back in. Right now these testimonials are kind of jumping over. That's cool, got my nice hover effect. These testimonials are kind of jumping over the photos, so we're going to do a little hover effect where it only shows part of that testimonial, and then when you hover over it, the rest of it shows up. So let's add that in our styles.css. So after Lorraine here, I'm going to go ahead and target the testimonials, targeting the quotes. I'm going to set the font size to being 1M. Line height is going to be 110%. And the font weight is 400. I'm going to target the testimonials section, the quote, the more, and also the testimonials and customer. Set the opacity to being 0. The font size to being 0. The line height to being 0. Oops, forgot my semicolon there. And then the padding top to being 10 pixels. So that kind of eliminated those there. They don't show up. So let's bring them back in on a hover. So I'm going to target the testimonials, targeting the quote, hover, more, and setting that font family to being our Open Sans. For our default sans serif. Setting the font weight to 100. Setting the display to block. The opacity is 1. then the font size is 0.8 em, and the line height is going to be 120%. I'm going to adjust the typeface for our customer's name, so targeting the testimonials, the quotes, hover, customer, and setting the display to black. Font size is going to be 0.7 em. It is going to, text align is going to be right, and the opacity to 1. And then targeting testimonials, quote, intro, after, and then the contents going to be ... And targeting testimonials, quote, hover, intro, after, content is blank. Save that. So you can see with the little ellipses that show up, and then we hover over, they go away. The one thing I want to adjust is on these, if I've got a period and then the ellipses, it just doesn't quite look right. So I'm going to jump back into my HTML, and I'm going to go ahead and remove those periods there and that extra space. On those, save that, and then typographically that works out a lot better. So now I can see the ellipses, and then when I hover over, they go away, and that looks really, really nice. So now that we've got the testimonial section stylized, let's go ahead and finalize our footer. I'm going to just comment out, this was that container that we commented out, just because it's giving me an error of an extra one. So I'm going to comment that out. Then I'm going to jump into, so I'm going to locate my footer. I'm going to go ahead and change this container to being a container fluid. Save that. And then I'm going to jump over into, and I also want to make sure I can see my footer there. Jumping over into my style section. I already have a footer here commented out, so I'm going to go ahead and work within there. I'm going to target the footer. I'm going to set the background to being #586 D74, lovely gray color. Font color is going to be, so color is white. Font size is going to be 0.8 M. And I'm going to set the padding to being 20 pixels, 0, 40 pixels, and 0. I'm going to target the footer A tags and set the color to being pound E0E 6AE. That'll turn them to a nice cream color. I'm going to also target the hover color, so set footer A, hover, and set the color to being pound EE C856. Give that the important flag so it'll override the existing styles. I'm going to target the footer phone class, set the font size to being 1.4 M. Font weight is going to be 700. And then the color is going to be pound EOE6 AE. I'm going to jump back up to this footer rule that I've already written here, and I'm going to add in a border of none. And margin right is going to be 40 pixels. Give me a little bit of margin there. And then the last thing I'm going to target here is the footer, that nav bar, nav, LI, A, and set the padding top to being 0, set the padding bottom to being 0, text decoration is going to be underline, and then the color is going to be pound EE C856, and flag that as important. Colon, save that. And we can see there's the phone number is a little bit larger. You can see that we've underlined those links, so we can see that those are underlined for the privacy policy. And that footer all looks really, really nice. And for the most part, our website is styled up. So the last thing we want to do is bring in Scroll Spy. All right, to use Scroll Spy, I'm going to jump into the Bootstrap, the getsbootstrap.com, and I'm going to, you can either just do a search for Scroll Spy. It's under documentation, and then down here on the right is Scroll Spy. What Scroll Spy does is that it kind of highlights wherever you're at as you're scrolling. So as I scroll down my one-page site, my link colors are, they're highlighting. So to use this, I'm going to just take it off the shelf. You can customize. I highly recommend reading some of the documentation with this. It must be used in a Bootstrap nav component or a list group. The big thing that it requires is you have to set the position to relative for the body tag. So in your CSS, your body tag must have that position of relative. So that's super important, otherwise this will not work. So I'm going to scroll down here and find the JavaScript for it. And here's the via JavaScript. After adding position relative in your CSS, call the scroll spy via JavaScript. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this little piece of JavaScript. I'm going to open up my script.js that's in our root folder, and I'm just going to paste that in. So I also want to make sure that in my styles tag, we should already have this. If you go all the way up to the top, in your body tag, I have the CSS rule for body position is relative. That's super important. So make sure you've got that called here. So let me jump back into my JavaScript here. So it's setting the target of navbar example. That is not what we've named our navbar. So if I jump back into my HTML, scroll all the way up to the top for my navbar, we have named ours as navbar site. So I need to change that in my scroll spy. So I'm going to jump back to, since my ID is navbar site, I'll go back to my JS, and instead of navbar example, it's going to be navbar site. And I will save that. So the last thing we need to do is we need to call for this in our HTML so that this fires. And to do that, we're going to use the data scroll. So if I jump into Bootstrap, I can see that this is kind of what we need to have. So in your body, you need to set the data spy to scroll and then setting your data target. So I'm just going to copy that right out of here, jump back into my body tag, paste that in, and then this is going to be navbar site. I'll save that. Let my site reload here for a second. And then you can see that as I scroll to each of the sections I'm on, that you can see that my navigation is changing to that active color as I scroll down. So that is what Scroll Spy does. Get down to the testimonials here, and then that fires. And that all looks really good. So that is your Southwest Vet Clinic website. Make sure everything is functioning as it's supposed to. And thank you guys for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.